couple of tidbits that I've been getting messages about actually in relation to defamation claims stemming from Doria Ragland, of all people, Meghan's mother, and potentially Prince Harry. Now, the second one is absolute speculation, but it has been doing the rounds in the media. So let's tackle Doria's case first. I'm sure you've all heard about GB News, the anchor on GB News, I don't know her name, saying that Meghan was raised by Thomas Markle, her father, because Doria was in prison. And she stuck by that allegation when someone tried to kind of verify and tell her, are you sure about that? She doubled down and said, yeah, she was in prison. And so, of course, this came to the attention of Meghan and Harry. And, you know, even though they keep trying to convince us that they have no idea what's going on social media. To be fair, though, it is a very serious allegation to make. And yes, absolutely, on the face of it, it is defamatory if untrue. For me personally, I don't believe Doria was in prison only because Tom Bower made no mention of it in his book. And that book, Revenge, might as well be, you know, kind of like the Meghan Bible. He has found out so much about her and has laid it all out to the best of his ability. He's also a former barrister, so he knows, you know, how to play by the rules. And I do believe that if there was any credence to the whole Doria being put away in prison for 10 years story, then it would have made its way into Tom's book, but it didn't. Now, that's not to say that Doria was present for much of Meghan's childhood, because Tom did say in Revenge that she basically disappeared for 10 years. And Meghan was primarily raised by her father. So, as I was saying, the story came to the attention of the Markle clan, or I suppose the Ragland clan would be more appropriate in this case, and lawyers were naturally involved. GB News received a legal notice saying, hey, the statement you made is defamatory, and if you don't retract it and apologize, we're going to come after you. And so GB News elected for the retraction and apology route. Apparently, the anchor, Carol Malone, now I have it in front of me, I can see what her name is, attributed the false claim to misinformation that she had seen online. I do have a portion of this clip, the apology, that I can play for you now, because it actually has disappeared. It was only up for, I think, 24 hours or so before GB News pulled it from everywhere. But the internet being the internet, people have clipped it and it is still available. I'll just play a segment for you right now.
In an episode of Britain's Newsroom on Thursday, December the 4th, 2025, I stated that Thomas Markle, the Duchess of Sussex's father, brought Meghan up while her mother, Doria Ragland, was in prison. I believe this to be the case based on what I now understand to be misinformation I had seen online. I was questioned about the validity of this claim during the broadcast, and I repeated this belief, which I now understand to be false. This was a genuine error. I accept what I have now been told on behalf of Miss Ragland, that she raised her daughter and that she has never been in prison or jail. I apologise sincerely to Miss Ragland and her family for any pain my comments may have caused, and I'm happy to set the record straight.
So as you heard her say, she read it online, and in a very bad move. You would think someone of her job, but also her age, would know better. I don't like dragging myself and going, look at me, I'm so much better. But to be quite honest, whenever I read something online, and maybe the lawyer in me, to be fair, I have to double check it. It's not even just for legal reasons, it's also just morally. You know, I feel we have a moral obligation to not spread lies. And the least you can do is have a quick check on the internet, verify your claim with credible evidence, and no, an obscure message or post on X or social media or even an article isn't exactly cogent evidence. So quite surprising that someone who works for GB News would make such an inflammatory comment without backing it up, but you know, people make mistakes. This comment apparently resulted in 805 complaints to Ofcom, which was the same organization that received all those complaints about Piers Morgan when he claimed that he didn't believe Meghan's lies, now I can say, on Oprah, or at least her side of the story, if we're talking about the whole suicide thing, because I can't prove that is a lie. I personally don't believe her because she really doesn't have a track record of being honest, but that's really neither here nor there. So this did result in a number of complaints. And what's interesting is that Meghan's team pointed out that this lie was conclusively debunked more than 2 years ago, which I don't understand when that happened. I must have missed it. But I'm going to go with what they're saying. Yet it continues to be recycled by irresponsible commentators, causing recurring harm. Miss Ragland proudly raised her daughter and has never been in prison. GB News did not apologize voluntarily, but only to escape a defamation lawsuit. And it speaks volumes that GB News removed any trace of that apology within 24 hours of making it. I also find it interesting that they've pulled it. I personally, if I was actually in the wrong, probably wouldn't have pulled it so fast. I can see why they pulled it, because they kind of want people to move on and forget about it. If it stays up there, it's always going to be found and potentially reignite or reopen old wounds. But 24 hours or less, it's a bit short of a time period, if you ask me. It is interesting, though, that they do double down, Meghan's team, on the notion that Miss Ragland proudly raised her daughter. In terms of the legality of this, by the way, I don't believe that Meghan's team want to pursue this any further. I think they've made it clear that they are going to drop this now that it's been dealt with by way of an apology. But someone did ask me, number one, is this defamatory? Yes, absolutely. It is defamatory if false. You know, this is a statement that's serious enough to cause some serious damage to Doria Ragland's reputation. And in fact, it could be defamation per se, because when you say someone's been in prison for so long, you know, long enough that they couldn't even be in their daughter's life, that implies that they've committed a crime that is quite serious. And if you're wondering what defamation per se is, well, damages are presumed. You don't even have to prove damages, which are normally, if it's not defamation per se, an important element that has to be satisfied. So yes, but it appears that GB News has taken care of it. Now, in principle, you can still sue someone even if they've apologized. It doesn't negate your cause of action. However, a court will take that into consideration when assessing what damages, if any, are to be awarded to the plaintiff. The next story is a lot less concrete in the sense that there haven't been any actual threats of legal action made, but it involves Tina Brown, the author of the Palace Papers, which I actually did a 3-part review of on the channel earlier this year, and I was not a fan of the writing, but I digress. The claim basically relates to a comment that Harry allegedly made, because that's the point of dispute here, whether he actually said this or not, to the late Jane Goodall in 2019 when she had met Harry and he had referred to Archie as my Africa child, not my African child. Tina Brown admits that that was just, a slip of the tongue, but he said, and to quote it directly, "I want you to come and meet my Africa child." And so Jane then relayed that to Tina Brown. Now, Harry's team has come out and said, absolutely not. Harry has never uttered such a thing. He's never described his child in such a way. But Tina Brown has doubled down and has come out and said, nope, I stand by what I said. I messed up when I said African, but he did say Africa. Now, look, here's the problem with this. Notice how I say he did say, he said, she said, Jane told her. It's all hearsay. It's hearsay upon hearsay, and therefore unreliable. I'm not saying Tina's a liar, but Jane is dead and she's not here to clarify the situation. So we'll never know is the point, because it's he said, she said. Harry says he didn't say it. Tina Brown says he did. Now, to the main point of, is this defamatory? No, absolutely not. There are no grounds for defamation here, because saying, look at my Africa child is not in any way harmful to anyone's reputation. I mean, you could argue that Harry's, really using the race card, which he and his wife have been doing for a very long time, but that's not defamatory. And honestly, he can't do anything about it. So if he's going to try to go down that route, then all the best to him, because all I can foresee in his future is just losing a lot more money. Defamation cases ain't cheap. All right, now for the main theme of this episode. As I said at the start of this podcast, the end of the year is a time for reflection, to think about what you've done this year. What were your successes? What were your failures? What were your learns, as Meghan likes to say? And I think we can all say, now that we're at the end of the year, that 2025 has been A resounding failure, particularly for Meghan, because she's the one who's been coming out with all these new, projects, and not a single one of them has actually stuck and done well. And as I was thinking about the series of flops that we're going to quickly get into, I actually noticed that, this is a theme for Meghan. Overselling, overhyping, and severely under-delivering. Everything is hyped up with Meghan. When she was going to marry Prince Harry, all the headlines, oh, it's a new era, oh, it's new blood, oh, whatever you want to call it. There was so much hype. We now know in hindsight it was all generated by her team, by her people, or at least most of it was. I'm not gonna pretend that the media wasn't swept into this whole, marriage thing and the excitement that a royal wedding naturally brings with it. But fast forward, a couple of weeks into her marriage, and everything started to go downhill pretty quickly. We very quickly learned, all of us, that Meghan is all talk and absolutely no walk. You think about Megxit, cast your mind back to Megxit, and how there was a lot of hype over that. And of course, we can't forget all the opportunities that Meghan and Harry were handed as a result of Megxit. There was the Netflix deal, which is now dead. And of course, Meghan has tried to make it out to be a really good thing. This is an evolution. This now gives us flexibility to shop our content elsewhere if Netflix is not a good fit. Yeah, right. Spin it however you want, Meghan. It is a major flop. And then, of course, Spotify. How can we forget the Spotify deal that dominated headlines and then dominated headlines again 3 years later because it came to a spectacularly embarrassing end for Meghan and Harry.
The grifters.
There was the book that we've all now basically forgotten about. I know I have. It was one of the final things I added onto my list, The Bench, which apparently made it on the New York Times bestseller, which means nothing nowadays, unfortunately. And, never to be heard of again. And then I thought about the random pointless tours, which have cost them millions. We're going to get to that. And then, of course, we get to 2025. Remember that Instagram post she made of her running down the beach like a crazy person without her children in sight, of course, because that's another running theme. Dropping that post, which I suppose to her was meant to signal the arrival of a new era, the ushering in of the era of social media. I don't know. Do you remember the era of visibility that Omid Scobie announced a few years ago now? Where has he gone to? I guess he's been markled. Boop, discarded after he served his purpose with the racist revelations of Endgame. Speaking of flops. Then, of course, came the whole, American Riviera Orchard isn't happening, so here is As Ever. But as ever, so much hype leading up to it. Yes, it's sold out. We don't know how many units they sold out of. Could have been 20 for all we know. But right now, we can say that As Ever was way too much hype, and the actual offerings just, were delivered with a resounding thud. And might I say, delivered 2 weeks late in many cases. The delivery system was abysmal. I don't know if they fixed it since, but people have been complaining about things taking way too long, tracking numbers not working, and it being virtually impossible to communicate with the As Ever team because there is no direct line of communication with them. They specifically say, hey, all your delivery issues are handled by a third party. So not our problem. And then, of course, there's With Love. I mean, what else can we say, really? Every season of the show, if you can call it a season because it was all filmed in one hit, just progressively performed worse and worse and worse. In fact, it is so bad that it made it to the Standard's Turkeys of the Year, the worst culture of 2025. This is what they had to say about Meghan's show. Almost so bad it's good, but not quite. The Duchess of Sussex did provide many moments of entertainment as her Netflix craft and food show gave a glimpse into the life and mind of the Montecito dweller. H drifted in and out to pretend everything was normal. But mostly this was Meghan weaponizing hosting while wrapping different products into bindles, like a combination of Annie Wilkes from Misery and Walter White from Breaking Bad. Yikes. Talk about a glowing review. But, of course, we're not surprised because with love, as someone who had to sit through it, it really was terrible. It's not something that I have to go out of my way or exaggerate. The common theme with Meghan's shows, including her podcasts, is that they are such a chore to go through. And that is not the hallmark of good content. And mind you, as a content creator on YouTube, when I edit my videos, if I feel that way about my content, I will chop it up and edit it even further. Because sometimes as I'm going through it, I'm like, man, get to the point already, to myself. So, you do the work, you do the magic, the behind the scenes, and you put it out there and hope that people like it. But with Meghan's team, I think they would have just had nothing to show if they cut the boring parts out, because every single minute of every single episode of every single season was enough to drive people to tears of boredom. I mentioned her podcast. I almost forgot. Confessions of a Female Founder. Whoa. Boy, did that just, land with a thud. I think I tuned into the first 2 episodes, made videos about them, and then completely noped out. I was like, nope. This is too much. It's too much. I only have, a limited number of brain cells that I can sacrifice at the altar of making content. And I drew a line in the sand right there. I mean, do we even remember that it existed? It's one of those things that I completely forgot to add to my list until, the last minute. Oh yeah, that flopcast of hers, which she actually had the gall to refer to it as some kind of a success in her many interviews that she gave this year, including to Emma Greedy.
I love that there's so much excitement and desire for another season, but I need to focus on my business.
I remember portions of that podcast where, they brought up imposter syndrome and how she says she's basically immune to that. She doesn't feel like an imposter ever because that's not how her brain works. She never considers failure. She doesn't have room for doubt. And it all really makes sense. It all starts to add up and you go, no wonder you are such a failure. I'm not saying that you have to doubt yourself and you have to experience imposter syndrome to succeed. But she said she never considers failure. If I can find the clip, I'll put it in right here.
I do not think about failing. No.
And look, it's all well and good to have a positive mindset. It's how I get through my difficult, spots in my life. You just have to stop thinking about the negative and you just keep going. It's like I said at the start of the episode, you put one foot in front of the other and believe in yourself. However, to say you never consider failure, you never try to plan for that, you never try to come up with a plan B or a safety net. I mean, again, it just explains why everything seems like a little hobby for Meghan. It's like, look at my little project as ever. Look at this little show I put together because why not? There's no heart and soul behind it. And that's why they flop, because it's just like her. It's like a cardboard cutout of what a human being is, a cardboard cutout of what a show about cooking and family and hosting should be, a cardboard cutout of what a podcast about female founders should be. It's all an image with zero substance behind it, just like how South Park very famously portrayed her a few years ago. And what makes these failures and flops all the more spectacular, I suppose, in Meghan Markle's case is the fact that she is such a high-profile individual. Her partner, Netflix, they've described themselves as a passive partner. She's never used that word, of course. But her passive partner, Netflix, is humongous. It's the biggest streaming platform in the world. And now it's buying out or trying to buy out major movie production companies. And it's producing movies. And it's huge. You don't need me to tell you that. And still, her projects are a flop. You've got all that clout. And she says this in the Emma Greedy interview as well. She proudly boasted about her clout and Netflix's clout.
When you have a very large machine and a very powerful and influential machine like a partner as with Netflix, and you have me and the profile and all of the attention that brings as well, you have the two of us together. Yes, it's an incredible partnership with a lot of, I'm proud of them. They've got a lot of clout behind them.
That podcast, I think, aired only after season 1 was released of With Love. And I think only after her As Ever product sold out in under an hour or so. So it was still early enough in the year for her not to have experienced the series of flops that awaited her at the time. But she must have known. She must have known. This is Meghan. It's all facade. She is saying that she's got all the hype and Netflix is contributing because they're two powerhouses coming together. And she didn't stop to think about the fact that it's actually embarrassing to admit to that. Because with all that star power and with all that capital, you still failed. And there's nothing wrong with failure, by the way. But when it's a series of failures, I don't think these people have succeeded in one endeavor since Megxit that they have supposedly set out to do. Not one. Even Archwell has experienced some serious financial issues. And now at the 5-year mark, they have restructured the organization from a foundation, which requires more work and it's got stricter rules and taxation and just more obligations, to Archwell Philanthropies, which is a lot more laid back, as per my understanding. I had to do some reading. I ain't no expert on this. I'm not a rich person who wants to funnel my money through a foundation, but even that's been failing. So according to their tax filings this year, they've had to make a series of inevitable redundancies a week before Christmas. Imagine that. Imagine you're in the holiday season, you're just about to go on holiday, and you're told you're out of a job. Merry Christmas! Didn't I tell you she's the rictus grin who stole Christmas? I wouldn't be surprised if, assuming she was there, she had that rictus grin plastered onto her face when delivering the bad news. I doubt that she does those things. Those are more, delegated things, and she tells her minions to deal with it. But yeah, Merry Christmas indeed. Now, of course, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out that Archwell is going through some serious financial issues if you're gonna have to make your staff redundant a week before Christmas. Specifically, their tax filings point to a deficit of $2.5 million. So they'd spent $5.1 million during 2024, which is crazy. I mean, it's the year. This is why I said when I mentioned those royal tours that, what was the point? They literally went nowhere. They just happened. And that's it. The only thing they resulted in was this deficit, because they went there under the pretense of, this is all philanthropic and it's charity and it's Invictus and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm pretty sure they basically filed their expenses against Archwell for those trips. And yeah, $5.1 million after the Nigerian and Colombian governments paid for their security and their accommodation, I'd assume. They received only $2.1 million in donations and grants over that same period. So that's where the $2.5 million deficit came in, which is in comparison to a surplus of $2.4 million from the year before in 2023. 3 employees have now lost their positions as the organization undergoes significant restructuring. And this is the part where staff were informed of their redundancies approximately a week ago, with the charity's net assets falling from $10.7 million to $8.2 million. The surge in spending represents a 54% jump from the $3.3 million recorded in the previous financial year. Much of this increase may be attributable to the Sussex's unofficial overseas visits to Nigeria in May and Colombia in August 2024. And if you're wondering what these expenses are made up of, well, the form reveals that they've spent $913 on staff salaries, and they distributed grants of merely $1.25 million throughout the year. One such grant included $50,000 allocated for refurbishing basketball courts in Nigeria. So there you have it. Yet another flop. What this restructuring really means in terms of the way the organization operates, it's that it must direct funds to existing charities and projects rather than launching its own initiative. So it's interesting. What happened to the Parents Initiative? It failed. It absolutely failed. They launched it. They had that interview with Jane, I forget her last name, where they both had no idea what they were talking about. It was a whole embarrassment in and of itself. And as we had all said at its launch, at the time of its launch, those of us who've been in the know for a few years, we have memorized this pattern. It was never going to go anywhere. And here we are. Is it shutting down because they can no longer launch their own initiatives? Don't know. I suppose time will tell. But suffice to say, it has been a rough year for someone with so much clout and so much hype behind her name and her partner's name, of course. No, not Prince Harry, which, yes, I suppose he's one of, the names, of course, and Netflix. I mean, what does that tell you? You've got one of the most famous couples in the world, plus Netflix, and you're closing off the year with really nothing, with just a series of flops. This is a pattern. As I said, it's a theme. It's a theme of Meghan and Harry's lives together, probably their lives before they even met, and it's never going to stop. Why? We always circle back to the whole Curse of the Narcissist series I made late last year, a year ago now. Narcissists never learn because they are never to blame. As far as they're concerned, everything that goes wrong is not their fault. The blame lies with others. And this extends to Meghan's personal flaws that people critique on the internet and in social media and in the mainstream media as well, by the way. Her father, this whole fiasco where she just sent him a letter chastising him some more, as far as we know. That's what's been published. Telling him, hey, I know you've lost half your leg and you're probably dying in the Philippines, but I'm still not going to see you because you talk to the press. I can talk to the press. How dare you think you can do the same? And when people criticize that behavior, which she voluntarily puts out to the world, the contents of the letter or the gist of it was not shared by Thomas Markle. She did it this time. And yet, when we criticize what she puts out in the public domain, she says, they're just all criticizing a caricature of me. In that Bloomberg interview, that's literally what she said. Have a listen.
But equally, it's not me that they're talking about. It's some caricature they've had to create to get clicks.
So you see, that's where the problem lies. She's come up with yet another fantasy, a fiction that she can live with to cope. It's a coping mechanism. She tells herself, that's not me. The person in the headlines that people are criticizing is a caricature that they invented. It has nothing to do with the real me, with who I am. And to that I say, Meghan, before people knew who you were, they all liked you a lot. Everyone was very excited that you were marrying Prince Harry. Well, a lot of people were. I shouldn't say everyone, because some of us got the whole red flag thing with the engagement interview.
Was he nice?
Everything turned when you showed us who you were. When people tell you who they are, believe them. And to hide behind a caricature at your age is really lame and shows a severe immaturity, a severe reluctance, pathological almost, to self-reflect, a complete lack of insight, and therefore no room whatsoever to grow, improve, and succeed. And I think with that, I'm going to close off the episode. I will definitely not be seeing you again before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone who celebrates. Happy holidays. If you don't, enjoy your time off, whether you're with loved ones or if you're alone. Just take the time to relax and enjoy life, because like I said at the start, no one's getting out alive. No one. So let's make the most of it while we're still here. All right. It remains to be seen if I see you next week. If I don't, Happy New Year, and I hope to see you in the new year. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.